There once was a child who lived in a house bursting with the sounds of joy. Day after day, joy bounced from window to window, scurried across countertops, and sizzled on the stove at breakfast. Joy skipped down the sidewalk in every step and buzzed on lips, spilling tales over dinner. And joy soared when every night at bedtime, the child's mother sang them the most beautiful lullaby. One day, joy vanished. It was as if the joy had cracked open a window and let its laughter spill out over the sill. And right at that moment, a great silence waltzed in through the back door, took charge of the TV remote, and set up on the couch. The house stood empty and still. The sound of joy was nowhere to be found. At first, the child was sure that joy was just hiding. But where had it gone? Maybe it had curled up under the carpet, or was enjoying some alone time in their room. Maybe Joy had simply gone for a stroll to clear its head and would find itself back again soon. But the child couldn't wait that long. So they packed a warm jacket and a large bottle of pink lemonade, the essential ingredients for a long journey, and they set out to find the sound of joy and bring it back into their home. As the child walked along in their travels, they heard the great silence following just behind. It seemed silence could be everywhere at once. The child tried to keep their eyes on the road ahead and their ears open for the missing joy. Hours slipped by and it was nearly lunch before the child suddenly heard a far-off sound. The child ran with excitement toward the growing sound and came upon a babbling brook. The brook twinkled and shone in the sunlight. The child smiled broadly at the sound of joy's bubble. The child grabbed the empty lemonade bottle and dunked it into the brook, filling it to the top. The child prepared to turn back home and even got in a few skips when they were stopped in their tracks. The child listened, and they heard silence. The child realized that the brook didn't babble at all. Nothing stays joyful, bottled up. Silence gave the child a toothless grin. Defeated, the child continued on their way. By mid-afternoon, they came upon a great canyon. As they crossed through, they suddenly heard the sharp cackling sounds of laughter, the kind of laughter that follows a joke one shouldn't tell at school. A pack of wild hyenas burst into the open, yipping and barking as their tongues lolled out. The child ducked quickly behind a boulder so as not to be seen. Learning the hyenas' laugh was sure to bring joy back into their home. The child prepared their cackle and jumped out to join the pack. The hyenas listened, and they heard silence. As much as the child wanted to join in the laughter, joy was not to be mimicked. The pack of hyenas scurried off together. The child and the great silence walked on. As the sun began to set, the child came upon a small village. Smoke billowed from chimneys and the windows glowed. The child entered the village, and as they did, they began to hear a soft hum. The child listened, and they heard joy. The child approached the closest house, stood upon their tippy toes, and gazed in through the window of the little home. In the cozy living room, a family played. This family had 2 parents, a child not unlike themselves, and a little tiny baby. And joy was everywhere. Tickling the baby, jumping up and down on couch cushions, and clinking glasses at the dinner table. A soft melody filled the room and spread through the house. The mother was singing to the little baby, the same lullaby the child's own mother had sung. The child felt their heart jump into their throat. The great silence wrapped himself around the child like a cloak. The child felt like there was no hope left. There was nothing more to be done. The child shuffled on with their cold companion and began to cry. Big, dolloping, silent tears. When Silence saw these tears, he began to grow, and the child grew too. They grew angry. "Go away!" But Silence didn't go. "Leave me alone!" But Silence would not leave. "I want to go home." Silence shrugged his shoulders. He felt at home wherever he went. Then, as the child thought of home, something happened. They wiped their tears, and they began to sing. They began to sing their mother's lullaby, softly at first, and then louder and louder. The child sang at the top of their voice, and there was joy. Joy. Joy hadn't gone missing at all. It was within the child still. It had never left. The child couldn't make the silence leave, but knowing that joy was with them, even in the face of silence, made the great silence far less frightening. Suddenly, they heard silence in a different way. And then the child did something unthinkable. They invited Silence back to their house for a glass of lemonade. Silence held out his hand. The child took it, and hand in hand, they turned back home. Silence came to many, but he was rarely invited in. Silence wondered if this time he might really be heard. From that day on, the door stayed open for Joy and Silence alike. Joy needed no invitation, but Silence paid a visit sometimes, and when he did, the family pulled up a chair and invited him to stay a while. When the great Silence was welcomed, he became a much more polite guest.